Welcome to PLUSone, the monthly series where I take a look at the free PlayStation Plus games and help you decide if they're right for you. After all, the games may be free, but your time is valuable. August 2019's lineup, like usual, includes two very different games, Wipeout Omega Collection and Sniper Elite 4. Are either of them worth your time, and are they worth the 30 to 40 gigs of space they'll take up on your precious hard drive? Let's find out, starting with Wipeout. Before that though, if you can, make sure you stick around to the very end of the video, because I've got a small announcement that you'll hopefully appreciate. Released in 2017, the Omega Collection features full remasters of two Wipeout games, the Vita's Wipeout 2048 and the PS3's Wipeout HD, along with the latter's Wipeout Fury expansion. While each of these three titles has its own differences that we'll dive into in a bit, they all retain the same core principle of Wipeout, and that's blazing fast anti-gravity racing action. One of the most apparent things with the Omega Collection is that it is absolutely stunning visually, updating these locales so well that if you didn't know any better, you would think this is a new game built from the ground up for the PS4. On the PS4 Pro, the visuals are kicked up even further into full native 4K, and regardless of if you play it on a Pro or a normal PS4, the game will never drop from its 60 frame per second benchmark. And on top of all that, the entire game supports the PSVR headset, which will either blow your mind or make you blow some chunks depending on how strong your stomach is. The lighting is excellent across all three games here, but it's especially gorgeous in 2048 thanks to that game's tracks being set in more grounded, real-world locales. All of the other Wipeout games take place years later as anti-gravity racing has taken off as its own sport with its own custom-built tracks, but 2048 is a prequel set at the very start of competitive anti-grav racing, so tracks were set up on normal streets. It's a tiny little detail, but I just love it. Anyway, let's dive more into the action here. The Omega Collection's campaign is split into the three different games here, and you're free to tackle any of them at any time. Each features its own races, missions, and challenges, along with its own progression tracking. Beating a bunch of levels in Wipeout 2048 won't do you any good towards unlocking more of Fury's campaign chapters, for example. There's no traditional sort of story here, and I don't think any of us would expect there to be. This game is about speeding down corridors through and through, and it excels at that. The vehicles you choose from are split into a handful of teams, and by racing for one team a bunch, you'll earn loyalty points towards bonus unlocks. On top of this loyalty experience bar is a normal experience bar that tracks throughout the entire game between all three campaigns, and you'll earn experience for just about everything you do, from having a clean lap to hitting enemies with your weapon abilities. Oh, yeah, let's talk about those. Some races will allow you to use weapons that you pick up as you pass weapon drops across the track. These range from your usual homing missile to a train of mines that you drop behind you, all the way to an earthquake that will ravage the track and the racers ahead of you. These do a great job of adding to the tension of some races, especially in those super close ones. I am glad they're not enabled in every race though, because the variety of jumping back and forth between weapon races, non-weapon races, and the other modes really holds the game together in my book. One thing you may notice immediately is that it's a tad bit on the easy side, even on the harder difficulties, or at least HD and Fury are. Maybe it's because I started with 2048, but the AI racers felt far more competent in that game, and I had a lot more fun trying to jockey my way into first place because of that. It was a bit of a weird jump though, since 2048 is the first game on the campaign menu, and arguably the most challenging of the three. Going back to the other games became a bit too much of a breeze, and I'm talking like getting the gold medal lap time on the first lap by accident kind of easy. It's a huge drop. Either way, all three were incredibly fun for me. Whether I was trying to find the most optimal line to get the edge on opponents, speeding down the streets at hundreds of miles per hour, racing the clock in time trials or best lap challenges, or playing the trippy zone mode, every new challenge that I took on pushed me more into my comfort zone with the controls. Zone mode replaces the beautiful, realistic visuals with more of a simulation vibe. The goal here is to survive the changing visual backgrounds as they enter new zones, looping around a single track again and again with your speed gradually increasing until just about every turn has you smacking a wall at almost the speed of sound. It takes a bit to get going, but this mode is fantastic for learning your vehicle of choice at the different race speeds that this game has to offer. Speaking of which, both 2048 and HD have their own sets of vehicles, their own heads-up displays, and what feels like slightly different control feels. Fury naturally tags along with HD since it was originally an expansion for that game, but it also introduces some new vehicles, more new tracks, and a few new game modes like Detonator. This one's sort of like a fun hybrid of zone mode and old school shoot 'em up arcade games. It might take some getting used to swapping between the games just because the different HUDs train your eyes to look for your weapon or vehicle damage in different points, but if you earn enough loyalty points, you can unlock the old HUDs from a couple of the classic games too. I do wish there was a teensy bit more variety here, but with 2.5 games in a classic arcade racing franchise, maybe I'm just nitpicking a bit. Maybe like having a hybrid campaign mode where the game would combine all of the tracks into one core gameplay style instead of splitting it up would help. I don't know, having 26 tracks but only 8 to 10 per game makes each campaign a bit of a slog after too long. Consider this the kind of game that you come back to for an hour or two at a time instead of one that you're gonna marathon through. Even in spite of these nitpicks though, if you're looking for a great racing game on the PS4, I wholeheartedly recommend giving Wipeout a +1 to your collection. It's a faithful, gorgeous recreation of 2.5 excellent racing games featuring 2-player split screen and full online multiplayer. And hey, it doesn't have predatory microtransactions unlike some other PlayStation racing revivals. Looking at you, Bandicoot. Altogether, the game could take you about 10 to 12 hours to beat depending on your skill, and you trophy hunters will have to grind your thumbs into the ground if you want this platinum trophy, so be prepared for the long haul. If you're watching this video after August and Wipeout is no longer on PS Plus, the game goes for $20 on PSN, and it's well worth that price, especially for you PSVR owners. Next up is Sniper Elite 4, another 2017 game, but a very different one than Wipeout. Instead of racing these futuristic anti-gravity cars through a fictional New York, you'll be sneaking around World War II era Italy and sniping Nazis. Those are kind of the same thing, right? If you've never played a Sniper Elite game before, that's okay because neither had I until this month. The best comparison that I would draw here is to something like the Hitman games, which I know a bunch of you have tried because it was free 6 months ago. Both games put you in medium-sized contained sandbox levels with a key target, a bunch of optional objectives for you to tackle at your leisure, and countless ways for you to tackle each of those objectives. If you want to sneak your way across the whole map so that nobody ever knows you're there, that's possible here. Likewise, if you want to run up to the enemy encampments and knife everybody in plain sight, that's cool too. These missions can run you anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to over an hour depending on how you want to play them. Really, the comparison only falls apart when talking about Hitman's costumes because you certainly can't play dress up here, at least from what I've played. Oh, and also the gore. That's gonna happen a lot. This is the mechanic that you know this series for, even if you didn't know that it was this series that has the mechanic. On select kill moves, usually when you hold your breath to pinpoint the perfect snipe, the game will slow down and shift the enemy into an X-ray mode where you'll see exactly what your attack is doing. This could be blowing somebody's lung out, hitting them right in the head, or destroying their colon like 2 AM Taco Bell with extra Diablo sauce. For the record, that's not an ad, I just want Taco Bell. But hey, it could be an ad, Taco Bell. Call me. These animations stand right up there with some of Mortal Kombat's worst, or best, X-rays? I think it depends on how you look at it. Either way, they're pretty at least. With mechanics like this, you probably wouldn't be surprised when I tell you that Sniper's story is far closer to your run-of-the-mill World War II melodrama than it is anything more original. This elite British sniper helps a ragtag group of Italian rebels fight off the German army while taking down the German officers that helped sink a Royal Navy freighter. There are some of your usual twists and turns, but really this story is a means to an end, and that end is tactical espionage action. The game's got a handful of difficulties for you to play on, featuring different levels of enemy intelligence and different bullet ballistics among other things. From climbing to find the best vantage point to taking down enemies from the convenient cover of bushes, Sniper's a very vertical game and I really appreciate that. Sniper Elite 4 also uses noise to beautiful effect. Trucks driving by you or planes flying overhead will create a noise mask, providing the perfect opportunity to take that shot. In many encampments, you can set off noise decoys to simulate this same effect and provide cover for your next move. Of course, if you're riding more with a full stealth mindset, you can pick up and hide enemy bodies, throw rocks to lure guards into the perfect ambush spot, set traps like tripwires. Really, you can do just about anything except only knock them out. If you want to keep a low body count for a more pacifist kind of run, you've pretty much just gotta not engage at all with enemies outside of those key targets. With your binoculars, you can highlight enemies, objectives, and notable objects like explosives to help with your planning as well. Just make sure you're using your binoculars and not your sniper scope, because R2 on the former is spotting and the latter is... yeah, I goofed. Perhaps having a dedicated spotting button would have been better than binoculars here, but that might just be me. The missions I played had some solid variance in their objectives, and especially in their locales. While Mission 1 was this sprawling, massive playground, Mission 2 moved far more into a closed quarters area, and I swapped out my inventory to account for that. Instead of giving myself 2 medkits, I used that space to add to my suppressed pistol rounds, and man did they come in handy. Your loadout is fully customizable depending on your overall player rank in-game, and every action you take will add to that experience. Skilled stealth attacks will naturally give you more, but it's not like you'll be punished long-term for running around like a madman, so do whatever makes you happiest. Snipers don't have to fly solo though, as in an awesome touch you can play this entire campaign in full online co-op with a buddy. While I didn't get to try it with anybody before this video goes live, there's also a second, more asymmetrical co-op mode where one player will act as a sniper to provide cover and a path for the other as the latter completes close quarters objectives. Frankly, that just sounds like a blast. As soon as one of my friends is around to try it, I'm gonna hop on that right away. There's also a surprisingly competent competitive multiplayer mode, which takes everything you've learned about the campaign and applies it in a totally different lens. Holding your breath for the perfect shot obviously won't slow down time since, it's online multiplayer, but sniper scope glint is a real thing here, as is running around aimlessly and knifing people. Since most, if not all of these maps seem to be adapted from the campaign mode, playing one of them will surely help you in your journeys on the other. Sniper Elite 4 is incredibly content-rich, arguably more so than that Hitman comparison I drew earlier might lead you to believe. I would suggest having a bit of patience when running through the campaign is all, because, as you saw earlier, let's just say these games never tend to work out well for me on my first playthrough. Altogether, like with Wipeout before it, I think this is more than worth a +1 to your collection, doubly so if you bring a friend along for the co-op play. These sorts of games naturally have a lot of downtime if you want to play stealthy, so having somebody to joke around with and bounce off of would not only mask that, it would also possibly help to optimize, or maybe ruin, your run. Packed together with a ton of content and that surprisingly solid multiplayer offering, yeah, this is a far more complete game than I'd expected whenever I looked at the Sniper series. I admittedly always saw these games as one-trick ponies, but Sniper Elite 4 gladly proved me wrong. The file will take up about 41 gigs of your hard drive space, and depending on what kind of player you are, could take you anywhere from 8 to 12 hours to beat, and probably close to 40 hours to platinum if you're a trophy hunter. If you're watching this video after the game comes off of PS Plus in September, Sniper Elite 4 is full price on PSN, but somewhere around $30 in stores. I think $30 is more than a fair price, provided it's your type of game, and there's more than enough DLC to keep you coming back for even more if you want to pay, that is. August's lineup altogether is a pretty solid one, and it breaks the recent trend of PS Plus offering one indie title and one larger title, usually with one of them being a single-player offering and the other having a multiplayer focus. I'm more than happy with this month, even as somebody who's owned Wipeout for a while. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. Alright, time for that announcement. As some of you may have seen already, this year I'll be taking part in a large charity livestream event run by the fine folks over at Fund the Charity Room. This year's event, Licensed to Chill, highlights some of the best and worst games that have come out based on movies, comics, TV shows, and more. We'll be live streaming licensed games from August 10th to August 18th over on the Fund the Charity Room Twitch channel, raising money for the International Rescue Committee. There'll be raffles every day that you can win just by donating, including a brand new Nintendo Switch and, more importantly, a Burger King gift card. As for which days you can see me there, on Monday, August 12th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be playing Shrek Extra Large, which seems to be a game that's just in my blood at this point, and on Wednesday the 14th, I'll be playing Tony Hawk from 2 to 3 p.m. as either Shrek or Spider-Man, depending on which option receives more donations, and later that day I'll be playing the Harvey Birdman video game, which, yes, that exists, and it is fantastic. And if we hit $23,000 over the course of this week, on Monday, August 19th, I'll be streaming Shamu's Deep Sea Adventures at 4 p.m. And trust me, you'll want to see that atrocity, so make sure you donate to make it happen. I'll also be hanging around throughout the event, depending on what times I'm available between work and whatnot. For more details, you can go to thecharityroom.com, follow The Charity Room on Twitter, or check out some of the links in the description below. Hopefully, I'll see you there, and hopefully you can help us reach our $25,000 goal.